Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new GenTechPC product showcase. Today we're going to be doing the full review and demonstration on the Aorus X7 Pro V3. This is going to be the top of the line 17-inch model from Aorus featuring the nVidia GTX970M SLI setup. We'll go ahead and kick off our review by starting with the full unboxing. You can see that we have a double box setup, which is pretty standard. Most manufacturers have a decorative box on the inside, but Aorus chooses to have a pretty plain box on the inside. This is also a good time to point out, as you can see on the front of the box, this is our media sample. So this is our review unit that was sent to us, and we're going to take advantage of that and give you a really nice high-end review. Once we get the inside box open, you would think that might be the laptop in there, but what we actually have is a third box. So we have a box and a box and a box. And this box is protected by the foam inserts on the corners. That's going to help protect everything inside from shock damage and crush damage. Once we get that box open, then we're going to find the laptop right there on the top, inside of a protective sleeve that helps keep it from getting scratched up. Here's the first look at our laptop. 17-inch form factor, but very thin. And from there, believe it or not, the only remaining accessory in the box is going to be the power adapter. Let's take a quick jump over to the system BIOS, and we can take a first look at some of the hardware and the BIOS options. As I go across the tabs on the top, we're going to reach one for the RAID setup. Here you can see we have two 256GB SSDs in a RAID 0 array. So that's a 512GB RAID 0 setup. Also, we'll get over to the system information on the memory. We have 16GB of system memory pre-installed. And as I go through the rest of the tabs, we'll see pretty much the standard BIOS options. Now we have the unit powered on, and inside of Windows we can see the first look at the screen. We can see the backlighting on our keyboard and the overall layout for the user. We have one large oversized glossy touchpad with integrated left and right clicks. We can see that our keyboard has the gaming macro keys on the left hand side separated from the rest. WSAD keys are highlighted to emphasize for gaming. Everything is going to be low profile chiclet style keys. We have the embedded arrow keys for the keyboard layout. While the touchpad is glossy, the palm rest area itself is a matte covering, so it's not going to hold your fingerprints. The Aorus logo on the top acts as our power button. As far as stickers go, we just have the SLI sticker on the screen and the Intel sticker on the palm rest area. The back of the LCD lid is also matte, and we have the Aorus logo in the center. We do have a few USB ports in the back, our power port, and then we have the left and right sides dedicated to exhaust for cooling the system. As we approach the other side on the right, we have a little bit more room for cooling here, and then we have the USB 3.0 ports, our mini display port, and a card reader all accessible on that side. And then as we get around to the front of the unit, we're going to have nothing on the front except for our status LEDs. As you saw, compared to the size of the USB port, the laptop is incredibly thin, so it's definitely made to be as thin as possible while still containing two video cards. So you say it's thin, but is it light? And that's what the scale is going to tell us. We have the laptop itself on the scale coming in at 6 pounds and 12 ounces. Then we're going to add the power adapter into the mix. This is rated at 19 volts and 10.5 amps, so 200 watt capacity. That's going to bring your carry weight up to 8 pounds and 14 ounces in total, so just shy of the 9 pounds if you want to carry everything around in a bag. Now it's time to take a look at the measurements. We have a measuring tape out, and it shows that we're at just over 1 inch, about 1.25 inches as far as the full height of the laptop in the rear. This also gives you a quick glance at the left-hand side connections that we didn't look at earlier. And over at the front, it's going to be coming in at under 1 inch at the very front, but due to how it's tapered, I would call it about 1 inch. Now moving into one of the software features, we have the macro hub up, and this piece of software is what's going to let us program and control all of the gaming macro keys on the left hand side. As you can see, while you have 5 keys to actually activate, the G key on top actually cycles through all of the different sets, so you can actually have multiple sets, giving you an actual total of a lot more than just 5 macro keys. There are several things already built into the software, or you can of course program your own. Next up, we have the command and control software. This is going to give us a graphical user interface to control a lot of the system settings that you normally have to dive into the Windows control panel for. So we have Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, screen brightness, volume. We have a lot of different options here, so this is just a nice intuitive way to kind of interact with your computer and get more control. Being that this is an SLI enabled laptop and you have dual graphics cards, one of the more important features built in here is in the very top left hand side, where you can enable or disable the secondary GPU. Now it's time for us to move over into the standard Windows Device Manager and look at the hardware from this perspective. We see both of our nVidia GPUs at the top. In the center under the network, we have the killer Gigabit Ethernet controller, so we have killer brand for the wired connectivity. Intel Core i7 4870HQ for the CPU, and here is the specifications for the monitor panel. And over here we have a small NVIDIA configuration window where we can disable our SLI and also choose how to use the physics. So now we move a little bit closer to one of the most important segments of the review, and that's going to be the gaming performance of the laptop. But while we're running the test, we went ahead and have the noise meter in place so we can monitor how loud is the system as far as the cooling goes. It's a very low profile laptop, so it has to use a unique cooling solution, so it's good to know whether or not that cooling solution comes through as very loud or nice and silent. Keep in mind that we always set up these tests for the worst case scenario, so that the readings we get aren't really the best way to assume how loud the laptop will be in person, since you won't put your ear right next to the exhaust, but it's a really good way to compare laptops to each other as we review them, because we're always reading each laptop the same way. So if you watch more than one review from us, you can always write down these numbers and then accurately tell if one laptop cools louder than the other. Okay, now it's time for us to check on the results of all those tests. 3D Mark 11 is up first with a performance score of 14,390. Down below here is the GPU Z information on one of the video cards, so you can see all the specs on the 970 mobile. And over here we have all the CPU and GPU thermal monitoring we did during that test, so we can check on the cooling. You'll see that the CPU managed to reach about 90 degrees Celsius max, while the GPUs, one of them got hotter than the other, about 86 degrees Celsius, while the other was 78 degrees Celsius. What can be said about these temperature results is that everything's within safe operation levels, but we do normally like to see a cooler temperature on the CPU, and the reason one GPU is hotter than the other is most likely that the heat pipe responsible for cooling the CPU is also shared with one of the GPUs. And while we're at it, just one more quick check of our noise levels, now at the system at an idle state versus under load, so you can see the differences between the two. Okay, the benchmarks are not done yet. We're now validating our score for Firestrike. You can see the result for us was a score of 10,673. One of the really great things about Firestrike is all the detailed information you get from running this. You get full line graphs showing all of your temperatures on the system. Feel free to pause the video for a second if you need to while we zoom in and take a look at some of that information. Now it's time for us to take a look at the disk access speeds. Remember, this is a RAID 0 array of the SSDs, so we have a very fast read and write speed from that. And what do you know, it's time to get to the bottom of things, both figuratively and literally. Time to disassemble the system and take off that bottom panel. You'll see that there's a perimeter of screws all the way around, so there's no easy way to remove those. Once you have them all out, be sure to keep them organized. As you can see, some are longer than the others. And if you try to put your system back together with the wrong screw in the wrong place, you could cause damage. So welcome inside and let's take a look around, shall we? The first thing we'll look at is the bottom right hand side. We have the internal battery. It looks like the battery would be user replaceable. All you have to do is lift up the tape that's holding it in place and then undo the necessary wiring. Right above that we see the system speaker. This is the subwoofer. And our two microSATA SSDs that came pre-configured in RAID 0. Remember, you can always change their configuration, but you would have to reinstall your operating system. Up above those, you have hiding away your combo Bluetooth and wireless card. And then we'll move up from there logically to our cooling fans. You'll see that the right-hand fan has one cooling pipe extending to the center, which is the CPU, while the one on the left has two. And that would probably explain the differences in temperatures we saw earlier when benchmarking. Over in our center area, we have the 4 system RAM slots. 2 of those came occupied with 8 GB each, so you could easily double that to have 32 GB of system RAM if you wanted. Over on our bottom left hand side, we see a couple more speakers here, and we see an unoccupied 2.5-inch drive bay. It uses a standard SATA connector, so that means you can put in any 2.5-inch mechanical or solid state disk that you would like. And lastly, we just wanted to point out that we do have a third microSATA slot here that was unoccupied, so that means we could expand the system up to 3 microSATA SSDs, and if we desire, put all 3 of those in a RAID 0 array for even faster read and write speeds. And that's going to be bringing our Aorus X7 Pro V3 review to a close. So if you found yourself interested, the best way to get more information on this model is to go to our website GenTechPC.com and look at the product page. There we have the current pricing and availability and the full system specifications. If you have any other questions our review didn't answer, feel free to ask down below in the comments and we'll try to answer that question and we can answer it for everybody. But if you need more personalized help, then feel free to contact us by phone or email and we'll be happy to help you out. So I just want to remind everybody that once again, this was GenTechPC and we'll see you next time.